Okay, so could you just introduce yourself, like a little bit?
My name is Tom Dexter. I've been a script doctor, script writer, director, uh, special effects artist, too many things for my own good, since about 1987, so I'm very old.
Um, for for those of you that don't know, or for those of you who are interested, Tom is in the role of like a ghost writer. He isn't famous or anything, but he does do professional work in the industry, and he's worked in a lot of movies, TV shows. I've honestly lost count myself. Um,
So have I.
yeah. And it's and to me to me I decided to get him on because he would have in my eyes he'd have an interesting perspective on most of the questions that I have today.
I'll try my best.
And so to recap, I've done two other recordings with Joe and my other friend. Um, I still don't know how to pronounce his name. I just call him by his username on Discord. But um, they've already answered these questions. So hopefully by the time all this gets edited, we've already seen those two videos or those two parts, depending on how I do this. And today I'm gonna ask Tom these questions, and 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 hopefully well, not hopefully hopefully I can answer them myself properly as well.
You'll have a real mix.
Yeah. Okay. So to start off, in your own words, how do you define a heroic figure in fiction? Is there like a plain set of rules that you have in your head, or are there like any requirements just like objectively?
A hero in fiction has to be what you call an enabler, and an enabler makes other people amazing. I'll give you a context. Say, for example, Doctor Who. When the TARDIS lands and the Doctor turns up, the fundamental job when you're working on it and writing it is to make the Doctor enable people to be brilliant in their own way. So characters can come, characters can go, but each person he encounters has a focus and a task to create the whole of the plot. So say, for example, you had the Daleks invade, somebody in the plot has to go and get something, and that will help the Doctor defeat them. So a hero has to enable people to help themselves and be brilliant. It's they are also there as a point of focus for answers. So if there's a mystery, say for example if you did Batman and you had the Joker was up to something, the point is to solve what the Joker's doing and stop him. So Batman becomes the point where you have to present answers with potential. He doesn't always get them right, so you have to make the audience feel as though they are as smart as the hero. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. When I answered this question yesterday, and when the other two answered it, they said that, in summary, I can't remember everything they said, but in summary, a heroic figure is someone who goes out of their way to help people, or make people's lives better, or make sure that nothing bad happens to other people. Which this is your answer is pretty interesting because I didn't think of it myself. Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree, and I absolutely agree. And the answer I mean, the point of the Doctor is that he helps people come more into themselves.
That's exactly right. That's enabling them. Let's put it like this: Doctor Who, as a character, or the Doctor, makes people realise their potential. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Um, and this is kind of veering off topic, but this is also why during, I think it was the 80s, when the Sixth Doctor, Colin Baker, was the star of the show.
Yeah.
That's why the show kind of became less popular, because the main character wasn't an upstanding figure. He was written as like, because I've looked into this, but he was written to be, he was not written as your typical hero. He was written in a way that makes him unlikable.
Right from the outset, you're perfectly right. Do you want me to talk about what happened?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay, so you had Peter Davison. He regenerated into Colin, and within the first 5 minutes of Colin Baker's first story, called The Twin Dilemma, he tried to strangle his companion, tried to kill her.
yeah,
So immediately the audience went, oh no, we don't like this. I can see it objectively from a story point of view, what they were trying to do, but the timing was terrible. You don't do that with the first story. His first series after that immediately was extraordinarily violent. In Attack of the Cybermen, one of the characters on screen had their hands crushed. Now you might think, well, okay, but Cybermen crushing this guy's hands had blood pouring off his hands. So the complaints came in. And the story after that, called Vengeance on Varos, the Doctor pushed somebody into an acid bath, and you saw them come out of the acid with their skin peeling off. It set alarm bells ringing all over the place, and it was a constructed decision by the production team to have the Doctor do that. So if you're looking for an excuse, there isn't one. They were pushing and pushing and pushing to have him more assertive and more violent. One of the things that happened at the time is the press started calling him Dr. Hooligan, which was kind of about. Colin Baker was very upset by all this. He didn't like the direction that
yeah. I remember listening to a couple of videos on this, and one of the writers, Eric Saywood, I think it was, he did not like Colin's casting at all, and did not agree with it.
Colin, well, yeah. The thing is, if you cast a lead part, you have to get the actor into audition, and you have to go through hoops of work getting them to prove that they can do it. They've just auditioned the new companion for the next Doctor, and she had to workshop, and with Ncuti Gatwa, the next Doctor, they had to do scenes and rehearse them to see if there was chemistry to spark between them. What happened with Colin Baker was he was at a wedding. One of the production assistants, who had worked on a story where he had been a guest star, called Arc of Infinity, which was a couple of years before. And because he was performing to the crowd, if you like, there was a gang of people there at the wedding, he was standing up, telling jokes, being, full of fun. That impressed the producer, John Nathan Turner, to the point where he said, that's the next Doctor. And he hired him based on that. So there were a lot of problems.
Yeah, but then I'm trying to get my timeline correct. But then Colin Baker as an actor was already like proven to be really good. So when he was already so when we saw him on screen, well, I didn't see him on screen back then, but when people saw him on screen back in the 80s, people who've seen his previous work would have been like, oh, he's already a known actor.
Yeah, but what you might not know is the public perception of Colin Baker was that he always played baddies.
Yeah.
There was a series in the 70s that ran for 7 series called The Brothers.
I think I remember hearing about that, yeah.
He was the baddie in it, a character called Paul Merony. And he was the most hated man in Britain because of that. So you look at that, that's the 70s. And it ran, I think, up until about 1977, something like that. So only a few years later, because Colin got the part in 1984, you're only talking about 7 years.
Yeah.
So the public wouldn't have forgotten that he was the most hated man in Britain. And he won an award based on that from The Sun, I think. I could be wrong. But as a result, you have that in your head, and then you see him strangling a companion and throwing people in acid baths.
Yeah.
You can see where people's thinking went.
Yeah, and nowadays, I think when people look back at the 80s era of Doctor Who, it's like a lot more fondly because we've had all of this extra content from the actors back then, from Big Finish, and Big Finish Productions does a really good job of making these like half characters really good.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Big Finish have given them a chance to, in the sense of Colin Baker, recreate his Doctor. Going back to what I was saying, think about it like this. Peter Davison's last story, The Caves of Androzani, at the end he sacrifices his life to save his companion, Peri. In the next story, in the timeline, like 20 minutes later, he's trying to strangle her.
Yeah.
So that is really confusing, and it was Eric Sayward's fault. He decided to take the programme down that direction of having a more aggressive Doctor. But Colin has now become really endearing because, I mean, he calls himself Old 60 now because he must be heading towards 80 years old now.
Yeah.
And Big Finish have redeemed him. And the same, they've let Sylvester go off and become this mystical figure because the script editor that did Sylvester's stories, Andrew Cartmell, had a master plan that he wanted the Doctor to be revealed as being far more than a Time Lord.
I think I remember this because he did implement it into the books that they released after the series got cancelled.
And Big Finish did an audio series based on the 4 stories he was going to do for the 27th series. So it came to fruition. It's out there.
Yeah, and what I really like about Big Finish is that it's like there's so much to go through, and but they do so good at like representing like heroic figures in terms of a Doctor, but they also do really good in like fleshing out the companions and making it clear that like they are better people because of the Doctor, and like that loops back to the question, because the Doctor's whole purpose is, well, not purpose, but like his whole appeal as a hero and a character is that he makes people better than who they were when they first met him.
I think one of the things to take in is that Big Finish have developed the characters that they brought back and continued with over something like 25 years now. So I put this question to you. Do you think in the last episode, The Power of the Doctor, where Jodie regenerated, do you really think they'd have brought back Ace and Tegan if Big Finish hadn't kept them going and developed their plot lines for the programme to pick up on?
Having watched, I think that, well, I think this goes to two perspectives in my eyes, because on one end, Big Finish has like kept the series going when there's nothing to there's nothing to watch or listen to, especially like in the 90s, and then after the TV movie, when there was no Doctor Who content at all, besides books. They kept the series going for a long time, and as a result of that, so did Ace and Tegan, because they were a part of that, and when it comes to Ace and Tegan coming back, I think that if it wasn't for Big Finish, then we wouldn't have the detail we have for those characters as much as we do now.
That's true.
Because especially for Tegan, because Tegan was given like the spot of the character that has to scream and has to go to the doctor for help.
Oh yeah, that's part of the situation. We talk about heroes. Heroes need a sounding board, somebody to turn to them when the audience might be going, what the hell was that about? You need somebody to turn around and go, Batman, what did that mean? He's got Commissioner Gordon in the new films. Robin isn't anywhere to be seen. But the Doctor Who companions are always, Doctor, what was that all about? And he turns around and goes, oh, well, this. In the 70s, they had a great trick where they'd come up with some gobbledygook, and the companion would turn and say, Doctor, what does that mean? And he'd say, oh, well, that's the Blinovich limitation effect. And the companion would say, and that is? And he'd go, we don't have time for this, I'll tell you later. And you never hear about it.
Yeah. And so Big Finish took Tegan, who was not a bland character, but a character that didn't have too much depth to her, besides like the intended purpose. And then Ace, who was a really beloved character, but became more beloved through that like supplemental material, and transformed them. So if it wasn't for Big Finish and like other material that included them, I don't think them coming back would have excited too many people.
No, I think the core audience are perfectly aware that there has been an evolution of the characters, and they've kept them evolving. I mean, Sophie has written a book called Childhood's End.
I actually read that, and I really liked how it went.
But that led directly into Power of the Doctor. That's the same Ace. So her work on that, and I mean, I know Sophie, and I know she really put a ton of effort into that, and she didn't have any external help, has led to that. And I think it's not without possibility that she could come back again.
I would love to see all the companions come back, because I have talked about this with friends who also watch Doctor Who, and companions coming back feels more special than like other Doctors coming back, because with the Doctor it's always the same character, but it's like different interpretations.
What do you think or feel about the fact that David Tennant's coming back for a year, and Catherine Tate as well. Are you happy Donna is back?
Uh, I really loved series 4 of the modern series. Um,
So are you actually excited that you're going to get more of that?
oh yeah, like series 4 was in my eyes like was like Doctor Who at its best. I'm not like in terms of consistency, I do prefer the Stephen Moffat era because because that's the era that I started with. But when I go back there are some episodes of the Stephen Moffat era that are kind of like kind of flop or just don't really flow well. And then like series 4 of Doctor Who, we had like a really good companion, a really good story arc, and a really good dynamic between the main leads. So
I mean, Series 4, the ratings were astronomical.
yeah,
When you get to Stolen Earth and Journey's End, they did that wonderful trick at the end of Stolen Earth of David Tennant starting to regenerate, and the it went up to way over 10 million people watching the next episode to see whether they were going to have a surprise Doctor there. So the cartwheels the stories were performing on that worked wonderfully for what they wanted, and that was to attract family audiences. I don't think it's ever hit that height again.
I haven't kept up with like the objective numbers of like the ratings, but I know that it's definitely not been that good since series 4. So
No.
so bringing back David Tennant and Catherine Tate from like professional perspective is good because it brings back old fans, but also from a fan perspective, and like some people say that they should have just gone with Shooty immediately, but in my head, I think that not only is this like a good way to bring back old fans, but it's a good way to resolve problems in terms of character.
I can't tell you the number of people I've seen commenting and actually said to me, oh, well, if David Tennant's back, I'll start watching again. So if that works for these 4 episodes, that they will bring people back. The trick is that going to carry over? You've got 3 episodes with Tennant and Catherine Tate, and at the end of the 3rd episode, Shooty takes over for the Christmas special next year. If they can get that audience to carry over, that's why it's going to start in November. So hopefully they'll hang on for Christmas.
Yeah, it's like again, I think bringing back Catherine Tate was not a better decision, but like since it is Russell T Davies' like best character in my eyes, like in terms of companions, I think that bringing her back for what's recognized as one of the best Doctors is really good, because then fans of the show back then can go and watch it, and fans of the show that kept on watching it even during like the last couple of years when it really did not have the same level of quality as before, is good because it brings back a spark to the show that we haven't had for a while.
Oh, sure. I mean, the problem has been that Chris Chibnall he held back. He didn't let any images go out to publicise things. He didn't let anybody see the finished programmes before broadcast. Yet now, there was barely any publicity for Jodie's final episode, but right from March, when Tennant started filming, Russell is getting big hits on the PR, and it's going to keep going. I mean, Children in Need the other day, the audience peaked when they did the reveal of the new companion. You think about it, compared to the past 5 years Chibnall was there, the amount of publicity that's generating and the audience awareness of what's going on for something that's not going to be on for a year is extraordinary. And when they start filming, you look at it like this: you're going to have Shooty's costume being revealed, you're going to have the start of filming, you're going to have the press following it for the next year, and they're doing a lot of episodes. So it is empire building. That's what Russell's doing. He's creating an empire. There's going to be offshoot series, loads of stuff.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about like Russell's way of writing and like publicizing his work, because it gives people stuff to look forward to. With Chris Chibnall, he's always like keeping things vague isn't like the worst thing, but when you're writing a show like Doctor Who that it takes a long time to produce, and it's only on for like a short time every year.
Well, the other problem was they didn't get ahead of themselves. Programs were barely finished by the time they were actually shown. Flux, they had 2 years to get that right. Yes, there were COVID restrictions. It was the middle of the pandemic, but they kept filming. But they were on the edge with the edits and special effects, getting them ready. Flux started broadcasting and episode 6 wasn't finished. So what's happened now, it's 2022. They started filming next year's specials a year and a half before they're needed, and they've wrapped. They finished in August. They start filming with Shooty next week, so they've got December. They'll finish something like October next year, and Shooty isn't seen till Easter 2024. So if they can keep that momentum going, they're not going to have this problem where you get gap years and literally audiences start to forget Doctor Who's even on.
Yeah, actually, I will go to the next question now, because
Yeah, sure.
this does relate, I get, a bit. So why do you think people are drawn to